السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بإذن today we'll be speaking about an interesting topic, and that is with regards to business and entrepreneurship. بإذن What's important to mention is that a lot of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were business people, and they had their own incomes, and they were people who worked hard. So not only did they have the deen side to it, the religious side to it, yes, they were the best of creation, but also when it came to the dunya, they also worked hard. A lot of them, they were those who chose after they had fulfilled whatever they needed. They were not a burden on anybody else, then they had chosen to live minimalistic lifestyles or not really go out to earn. And there were those who went out to earn, and they became some of the wealthiest of people. جميعا.
Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
How are you, Sheikhna?
Alhamdulillah, how are you? I hope you're well.
Alhamdulillah, I'm well and in good spirits. We hope the viewers are well as well.
Alhamdulillah, inshallah, we hope everybody's well. Inshallah, today we'll be speaking about an interesting topic. We've touched on it many times, and with just a short and brief introduction, and then we want to get straight into the actual doing and the know-how of it, inshallah. Basically, when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, etc., when we look at the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, a lot of them were businessmen. Yes, they were the best of people when it came to the deen, but also when it came to the dunya. The difference was their lives and their goal was not this world or wealth. Rather, it was to use it to do good deeds and attain the akhirah. And just one example that always stands out for me is Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu was promised Jannah on several occasions. But two of these occasions were because of his wealth. Both in Sahih al-Bukhari. On one instance, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever buys the well of Ruma and gives it to the people. Basically, at the time when the Muslims came to Medina, they didn't have water, and the person who owned the well didn't want to give it for free, and he made it very difficult. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, whoever buys this well, then he will get Jannah. So imagine your whole life. We are all living, bi'idhnillah, we are all trying to get to Jannah. Imagine the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam stands up and he says, whoever does this good deed will get Jannah immediately. Everybody wants to do it, but not everybody can do it, because this needed not only somebody to have iman and belief, but they also needed wealth. So Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu in this instance was somebody who had wealth and he was able to buy the well. Another thing, when it comes to the army of Usra, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam again says, as in Sahih al-Bukhari, that whoever prepares this army, he will be given Jannah. Again, we hear about Jannah. Everybody wants to get Jannah, but along with Iman, what was also required was a person to have wealth, and Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu had this wealth.
Yes, absolutely. We find Islam promotes a balance between the dunya and the akhirah. So, of course, your primary goal and focus should be the akhirah. But we find even in the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we would say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So, if we take that into proportion, that dua, you could literally see that two parts of it is to do with the akhirah, and one part has to do with the dunya. So, I'm not saying that that's the proportion that you should divide your life into, but there is وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا. Don't forget your portion from the dunya. So survive, live, trade, do something for yourself, building this dunya, as well as and especially as you coined it, for the akhirah. You use this dunya for the akhirah, and that's something that is a powerful tool that can be utilized in order to achieve and attain goodness.
Shaykhana, I think this topic, it means a lot to the both of us. And if somebody had to ask us, a lot of people would look at us and they would think, okay, it's strange. Why are they talking a lot about business or a lot about wealth, etc.? For me, I think if you look at wanting to do things in life, we're not saying you have to have wealth, but wealth helps a lot. And in certain instances, you need wealth to do certain things. So you can't go begging, or you can't sustain certain things without wealth. That's why if you look at some of the decisions the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam made, yes, there was, obviously it was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was a community benefit, but there was also an economic benefit. I give you a few examples. One of them being when it came to the mu'akha, pairing between the muhajirun and the ansar. People from Mecca, so many people have come. They've come into a foreign land. They've got nothing. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam pairs them with people. Yes, it was good that somebody had another brother. They could live together, you know, they could help one another. Also, when it came to the wealth, they shared in the wealth. And if you think of it economically, if you bring people who have nothing to a certain place and they're not doing anything, obviously they're going to be in need, they're going to be suffering. So economically, this helped them when it came to, you know, earning. Yes, they would also help in the fields and they would do certain things. Also, when it comes to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Khulafa, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar radiallahu anhu, Ali, and Uthman radiallahu anhum jami'an, we find a lot of decisions were also economic decisions that were made when the Islamic empire spread. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he made the diwan where he collected the names of everybody. So when they used to give them wealth, etc., he knew who was given what and how much were they given. And this was according to their level. What's this? This is to do with wealth. This is to do with economics, so to say.
Yes, you know, Rasulullah ﷺ would make this dua, Allahumma kfini bihalalika an haramik. You know, suffice me with the halal, a way that keeps me away from the haram, which is meaning it's enough for me such that I don't need to engage in haram. وَأَغْنِنِي بِفَضْلِكَ عَمَّنْ سِوَاكَ. And, you know, empower me or make me independent with your favor from those who are besides you, anyone besides you. So, in and of itself, if you look at the dua, one part of it would be economic and financial independence, where you earn that independence and you've got it such that nobody can tell you this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to live your life, this is where you're going to be at such and such a time, and this is where you're not going to be. So that's one part of, I think, the drive for a lot of people to try and earn their financial independence, where they want their freedom, so to speak. They want to be able to decide for themselves how to allocate and apportion their time, etc. And I found this very interesting because, you know, based on personal experiences, etc. as well, you find yourself in situations where you're employed, and it's very different to when you're an employer. You're now a lot more free, so to speak, to now decide, you know, apportion things, put things in place, and mechanisms, systems, such that your time is freed up for other, you know, useful and beneficial projects, etc.
Shaykhana, after speaking a little bit about how this is actually encouraged in Islam, as long as somebody is not doing something haram, something permissible, and with the correct intention, it can become a good deed. We move on to the topic of living in the world we live in today, with those who follow, for example, some of the economic difficulties, for example, 2008 in a lot of countries, currently with the pandemic, etc. We find a lot of people who have been put off work, a lot of people who may have had savings or retirement that as they worked in their job, they had given so much money, but now this money is, they're unable to return it to them later on. And I think it's something important to speak about because it affects everybody somehow or another. If you're watching this, you probably own your own business, or you work in somebody's business, or you will eventually get to that stage. It's one of the two. And I think this teaches us the importance, especially in the world we're living in today. Yes, it's not easy. It does require a lot of work, and it does require dedication. But it teaches us that we should have, as they term it, more than one stream of income. Imagine you on a job and everything is going well, and all of a sudden you need to be laid off. All of a sudden you know, they tell you your services are no longer required. Sometimes in the world we live in, not only when it comes to wealth, but things in general, when things are going well, we never ever think about the rainy day, or we never ever think about when things are not going to do well. And the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has decreed that nothing just goes, well for everybody, except who he wishes. But there has to be that up and that down. So I think that's a very important topic to speak about, that yes, you may have a good job, you may have good wealth. Okay, let's say you earning. Don't just blow your money or waste your money. Think about putting your money somewhere where it can give you more money, because there may come a time where you need that money.
The system is designed such that we go to universities in order to learn crafts and jobs that fit into another person's dream. Most of or a lot, I won't say most, but a lot of the degrees that are out there to do with business, to do with, management of business, etc. It's to put you into a slot of another person's dream that will help him build his dream. And that leaves that person with absolutely no idea as to what he's going to do when he's retired or laid off. So what they do, they realize that this is a problem. So what did they do? At some point, they made something called a pension. So now you contribute towards your pension, right? Now, we've seen these pension schemes, which in and of themselves has nothing to do with the person, but is actually benefiting the people who are controlling these schemes, because a lot of money is being poured and they know into that pot, and there's a very small hole that is literally, there's a few pennies leaking out of. So they have time to grow that wealth, benefit from it, enjoy it, and unfortunately at times even usurp it entirely. Now, this is not speaking for all systems and all pension systems, but I've seen a lot of these that are really a serious problem. Like, for example, I'll give you a simple example. Those who have been contributing in some countries of the world, they've been contributing for their entire lives. The currency that they gave in 1970 or 1980 was worth something. It was worth a tremendous value. And the proof of that is they bought their houses for $20,000, $30,000. Today, that same house is worth $300,000, $400,000. So yes, there may have been a growing of the economy entirely, etc. But at the same time, there was a huge devaluing of the currency altogether. So they instead of their contributions being grown, so to speak, it was actually devalued. So if that person, now my point is that if that person had to take exactly what you were saying, take that money, invest it in something that would, provide a small stream of income, that would have probably grown much bigger in that 30 years than their pension ever would have. So I think we can encourage people, of course, where people have to pay their taxes, it goes towards pensions. We're not discouraging them from paying that which is obligated by the law. But in addition to this, think out of the box, save some away for a rainy day and put it into some investment that will provide you with a small income, and then diversify, not only one, but several different streams of income, like you said. So if one stops, you've still got another one there.
Something interesting, I was speaking to one of the family members, and he was saying last year we were sitting and talking, and he said that, I laugh at people who tell me that I'm investing money here and I'm getting 5% or 7% or 10%. Then he was doing the maths with me, and he says that if you go into buying and selling, buy from outside, import your goods, you can get 30, 50, 100%, even more at times. And this is by no means a far shot or a long shot. So I think that's important. So basically, if you are somebody who is in a job where you comfortable, you like it, we're not saying leave your job, we're not saying do something irrational. What we're saying is that there may come a day where your services are not needed. There may come a day where the whole currency changes. And as we know, the current economic system we have, as you know, in fiqh, there's madhab. So you've got Hanafi madhab, Maliki madhab, etc. In economics, there's madhabs, or there's schools, so to say. You've got Austrian economics, you've got Keynesian economics, people who follow John Maynard Keynes, etc. it's important to read and just have a brief idea about this. And basically, they believe a lot in where there's the economy should be stimulated by a central authority. And as we know that in and of itself, yes, there's been benefits, but it leads to the devaluing of money. So you might have $100 today, but after a year or 10 years, today you might be able to buy 10 loaves of bread. After 3 years, you might only be able to buy 5. It's the same number. So that's also important to remember. So for those in a job, we're not saying leave your job. We're saying start thinking of what may happen. People in 2008 who thought nothing would happen, they lost everything. They lost their jobs, and in turn, because they were on credit, they lost their houses, their cars, etc. Also, something similar we're living in currently with the global pandemic. People are scared to spend, and the money, they call it the velocity of money. Money is not moving from people's hand, from my hand to your hand to everybody else's hand, for example, fast enough. So this stimulus, the money that's been printed, yes, it's been printed, or they send you your paycheck, etc. However, later on, you would find that, as happens all the time throughout history, inflation eventually takes over, because now, you know, I always heard about inflation and how when the prices go up, because there's a lot of money chasing a few goods. And if you think about it and you look into it, you would find that, yes, that's common sense. It makes sense, because let's say I've got this phone here. This is, we've got 10 phones, and somebody is paying the minute the price, or the minute you have money and everybody else has money. I don't have enough to carry on producing more phones. So what do? I raise the price to hold on to my stock. So more and more and more money, the prices carry on going up. So it's important to mention these few things as Muslims before anything else, and as human beings.
Yes, also sitting on liquidity, like you mentioned, you know, the value, it's established that the value of currency keeps going down, okay? So if we know that it's going down, then to hold on to cash would be a mistake. And today it's not even cash, it's in your bank account, it's an amount which is just a figure. To hold on to that would be a mistake, because especially over the long term, because you're just devaluing that for nothing, for no reason, letting it devalue. So rather than that, invest in gold and silver, invest in some business idea, let it, you know, grow, even though that may be a small percentage over the cumulative, you know, the cumulative effect over the X number of years would be excellent. You'd rather be sitting with product than sitting with cash or liquidity.
Yes, over the long term, I mean, cash will lose its value generally. And also when it comes to, at least if you don't lose money, you want to have the same value. So it's important to mention that. Again, when we look in the world we live in today, if we go into a bit more the doing part of it, there's a lot of people following, mashallah. You would find that, let's say you want to do something, you've got the internet, you've got a tool where you can reach so many people in the world. You can run an online business. You can be, I don't know, an influencer, as long as it's halal. You can be whatever it has to be. There's so much opportunity out there. Sometimes just sharing what you are passionate about, you can eventually build a business off that. I think for people following, especially if you're young, you know what, try it out. We're not saying do anything haram or anything silly. We're saying you're already on social media. You will have to go at some time or another to get some wealth, especially if you're younger and you're able to understand how social media works, how, example, influencer marketing works, etc., etc., etc. Try your luck. You know, you might just be onto something, and it will help you in the long term, bi'idhnillah. You know, there's no harm in trying. You would regret if you didn't try when you had the opportunity. Then later on, you might get busy.
Yes, wallahi, and as it is, people are spending so much time on their phones, on social media, they're building their followership, you know, etc. So if you're doing it, you're passionate about it, why not use that platform to grow financially, to grow in some way? It would be lovely, you know, to be doing something productive on your phone. You know, many times you find scholars telling people that don't engage too much on social media because it's detrimental for you. But then what alternative have you given them? So this alternative is brilliant, which is to say, carry on, you know, build what you're doing as long as it's halal. but make it productive such that you're not wasting time for no reason. You've got something of value at the end of the day. Your time invested was worth it. So I really like that idea and encouragement from you, you know, to the youth especially.
You know, there's so much value on the internet. There's so many good things, good articles, good tweets. I found, for me, my favorite app, I think, is Twitter. So much so I was telling somebody the other day, I said that eventually what they should do in university thesis, etc. I said a lot of new knowledge is on Twitter. It's not in any books. You will eventually have to quote somebody's tweet, I think, because you can't wait for that. 10 years later, it might get into a book. And you know, the academic way of doing things, yes, it may have its benefits, but it also has its flaws and its problems. And I think it's important for us to make use of the resources we have. I'll tell you a personal experience of myself. I told you in the last about 3 or 4 years, 3 years roughly, I changed my whole environment. I feel like I'm talking about my online environment. I went from a place of where people were, it was a place of scarcity. People were not giving, so to say. People were not feeling that, you know what, somebody else can do well with my advice without me losing anything. So many times we don't want to tell other people that, you know what, you can do this, or this is a good idea, because we feel that it will be harmful for us, or we will lose. And, you know, I changed my environment. I followed different people. And I found that from that, my mind and my thinking started changing. And there's so much benefit out there. You know, you can take benefit, and then you also get to doing what you need to do.
You know, what would you say would be simple ideas for people to engage in? You know, perhaps we can be a bit more specific here, where they can engage in these ideas simply online. Start an online, you know, trading app, for example, get it into trading, or what kind of ideas would they be able to engage in order to build themselves into it, to learn from the whole process, etc., as a start?
You know, to be very honest, I'm not into trading, and I'm not bringing anybody down who's into trading. But if you read the statistics, let's say after it's halal or whatever is halal, etc., you would find that generally most people lose money and they don't make money. And you must remember that there's 2 types of businesses. There's, or we could say business is of 2 types when you want to make money. There's that way you put your money and then you're hoping. So this, you're waiting for the market to change, or you're waiting for something to go up. It's completely not in your hands. Whether it goes up, whether it goes down, you've got no say in it. Then there's another type of business where, yes, it's more in your hands after the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's more buying and selling. That's more where you can give something of value. Remember, if you're just trading and that, again, I'm not bringing anybody down, but if you have some money, I wouldn't, personally, I may be wrong, feel free to disagree with me, but I wouldn't really advise you to put your money into stocks or try to trade, I don't know, Forex, even if you found a halal version of it. And there's a lot of, you know, detail into it, where if you're below 100,000, are you really trading Forex, or are you just getting exposure to price, etc. Let's say after all that detail, and let's say it's halal, if you found a halal alternative, you're not really going to make money. Think about it. If you're trading US dollars and pounds, and it's moving only a few cents every day, and you're not trading on leverage, and you've got your $100 or $200, and after fees, etc., I don't think you're going to be making a lot of money. But if you come now to a business, this is one of the easiest times to start your own thing. We're not telling everybody to leave what you're doing. Try something on the side. Again, now we can come to this business. There's 2 types of it. Somebody who's selling physical products. If you're an individual, let's say you're a student, you're somebody in college, you don't really have time. Yes, you may find a good deal in your wholesaler. You might find something from China you want to sell, etc., etc. But remember, you've still got to put capital down unless you drop shipping. And then you've still got to worry about your fulfillment. So, for example, if you speak to China now, people in China, they will tell you, those who had websites and were shipping out of China, because of the current pandemic, Shipments are delayed for 30, 60, even 90 days. So a lot of people lost a lot of money, or a lot of people went out of business. The second best alternative, I think, especially if you don't have much time, is to think of selling digital products, online products. That could be your ebook or your course, and then going into consulting. Another interesting thing I'll tell you, and for those who, sorry to digress, but I think if you really want to have a good idea of business online businesses, you should read the Secrets series. It's by a guy called Russell Brunson. And he speaks about the .com secrets, where the internet part of it, how to get yourself, how to do the actual building blocks. And the expert secrets is yourself, putting yourself as a speaker, as the authority figure. Then the traffic secrets, which came out recently, is how to get people into there. And one of the things he mentions is that when they used to sell before, sorry, Sheikh, I'm talking a lot, but
no, please.
When they used to sell before, right? They would sell products. Let's say you've got this phone is $10, for example. After you paying for an advert, you're getting somebody in, and let's say you sell it for $10 and your advertising cost was $5, so you're making $5, right? But the advertising cost can go up. As anybody who uses Google and Instagram and any social media knows, that the algorithm changes. What was allowed today won't be allowed tomorrow, etc. So you at the mercy of these platforms. You're at the mercy of these platforms. So what he eventually says, that what we learned is, if you want to have a good online business, and that's any business in general, you must have a value ladder. A value ladder. I'm speaking in a lot of detail, but for those who are able to follow, you can follow, and for those who can reference, they can reference. And you would find a lot of people do this. So you selling something, you get somebody in the door to your product, and they selling you selling this phone for $10. After that, it doesn't stop there. They say a buyer is a buyer is a buyer, which means if somebody buys from you once, they're more likely to carry on buying and buying and buying from you. The only reason they stop buying, or they only stop buying for two reasons: if you insult them, or if you stop selling them. That's why if you look at things, somebody who's selling a $100 product, there'll be people who buy. Somebody who's selling $1 million product, there'll be people who buy, not as many. So then they have a concept called a funnel, so to say. And this funnel, you would find that if I tell you this, then you would notice a lot of people who you're following now. They'll tell you, for example, like, we giving you this free ebook, come and sign up, or we giving you this thing for free, come and get it. Basically, what they're doing, they know that you currently belong on Instagram or Facebook. They don't have direct access to you. They want to get your direct email or direct phone number, so they can get to you directly, right? So they will give you this thing of value. In exchange for your email address, they've got a customer. They eventually will sell you slowly, 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 and you find an email sequence, and you find they'll send you an email every day, or they'll have this and this and this. As long as it's something good, as long as it's something of benefit, as long as you're not doing something haram, you know what, go for it. As long as, in fact, if you're providing a service to people, go for it. Another thing is that roughly, they say the average of one email is $1. So if you have an email list, for example, of 100,000 people, or 1,000 people, let's start at, with the right audience, inshallah, you'll be making, for every email you send, $1,000. It's very interesting. I mean, you know, when I got into this about 3 years ago, and I read this, not only did I find the business side interesting, especially the selling digital products, I also found the fact that a da'iyah, somebody who is calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think there's a lot we can learn from advertising, direct response marketing, how to tell a story. You know, in the same book, he mentions how films are designed. And they say there's usually about 7 steps to them. A film or a story, usually it first starts with the character. So you get to know him a little bit, who he is, where he's from, etc., etc. This character has a dream, and then on this dream, he encounters conflict, and then they take you through the whole journey. He says, if you look at any story or any film, you would find that that's how it's written, and that's how people get you into their story. So, after you finish this live, go to some of the people you follow, people who are selling things, people who are telling you take this for free, etc. You would find, yes, you not knowing that this is marketing, and if they're doing something that is okay, that's fine. But you wouldn't know that they're trying to get you from point A to point B and eventually sell to you. I'll give you another example. So there's some guy on YouTube, if you carry on watching, you'd find that he'll say that, okay, get this for free. I don't want to say exactly because you probably know who he is. They say, get this book for free and you learn so many words. After you sign up, your email is now taken, and immediately straight after on the next page, it tells you, and you can buy this next book for $4 or $5. So think about it. How did he get you there? He offered you something for free, something you thought was valuable. 100 people who come in, eventually 1 or 2 or 3 will buy. After they buy, he then goes, they take you through their value ladder. Cutting a long story short, I've spoken a lot. My advice to anybody who's young, anybody who's got no money, especially, you've got no money, start thinking of selling digital products. There's no shipping involved. Just don't cheat the people, that's all. There's no shipping involved, and you would do the work once. And inshallah, you can try it out. A lot of people asking about these books. I'll just get them 1 minute. Sheikh, you can carry on speaking to me.
Yes, mashallah. No, so Sheikh is just going to get us the books. Alhamdulillah, he gave us some brilliant insight. And I think
I read these books. I read them, the older books. These are the newer books. But basically, this one, he speaks about setting up your page and the funnel and explains everything what it is. This one, he then speaks about you as a person, your personality, your character, etc. And this one speaks about getting traffic. They call it traffic, getting customers, etc. And the fourth book is just like a workbook. This just came out recently or just now. And I have read the ebooks, but I also thought I'll get these. Some of these books, the references made in them. Another thing, as Muslims, sometimes when we show you these books or whatever, there may be things that you don't agree with. You've got to be mature. There'll be a lot of things in your life that you will not agree with. You know what? You leave what's against your deen or against principles, and you try your best.
A lot of people like to learn from trial and error. So they don't want to actually go in and study and research before they get into something. They've seen it's halal, they see it's okay, and they move into it and see the mistakes that they make and then learn from trial and error. Now, with this, I'd just like to give them a small piece of advice, which is invest low, start small. Don't try to go too big one time, because when you invest small, you lose small. So in order to learn, you're going in there not to make a huge profit immediately. If you do, alhamdulillah. But if you don't, then at least you've lost a very small amount and you've taken away a valuable lesson. A lot of people, I find, especially I like what you said about markets and shares and trading forex, etc. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know it. And I'll be honest with you. For example, when it comes to trading forex, I don't know how to do it online. I don't know how to go about it. I can do it physically on a cash basis, yes, but I don't know how to do it online. Now, if I go onto these platforms and start to trade forex without having any idea as to how to do it, or to trade shares, for example, I would do it with a very small capital injection. Why? Because I know that I'll lose small, and most likely I will lose. 99% of the time, people who have no idea what they're doing end up losing. And to me, to be honest with you, some of these people I think are just gambling at the end of the day. They buy something hoping that it will go up, not even really realizing the true market value, what it can be, what it should be, where they're investing at which point, whether they should be investing in stocks that will pay them dividends, or it's a stock that they should buy and then sell later on. they have absolutely no idea, and then they go into it, and unfortunately they lose a lot of money, and they're sitting with their hand, their faces in their hands. They don't know. They're regretting at the end of the day. So I love what you said about markets. Yes.
My father always tells me, he says that I would never give my money to anybody else because I feel that I am the best person to invest my own money and use my own money. He said, why are you giving somebody else who you don't know what they can do and what they've got no real incentive a lot of the times to hold it. Another thing is what you mentioned is something interesting where people don't know and this goes up and that goes down and they're just throwing money. And just now, a few weeks ago, one of the big companies, they were completely bankrupt. They filed for bankruptcy, Hertz, and the share price went up. And that's why if you read on Twitter and you read in the news and read about Robinhood, etc., the platform, I read about how one of the youngsters, a few days ago, he took a contract in leverage. He had leveraged his position. Basically, let's say you've only got $100, so the platform will allow you and they'll tell you that we'll make this $100 times 100. So it's like $10,000. You can get to $1,000, $1 million. If you profit good, we share in the spoils. But if you lose all the money you must pay us. So there must have been a glitch or something. And he thought he had lost on the trade. And he thought that he was in debt $700,000. And he then committed suicide, not realizing that after everything was done and that glitch was fixed, he was actually in profit $16,000.
Shoo. Yeah. So he lost his life.
My advice to anybody who wants to get into business or wants to get into even business, only take how much you can chew, how much you can handle, how much you can cover. Don't get into debt. As we mentioned now with online, with Instagram, and that you can make a digital product without going to get money from everybody else. My father always tells us, again, he says that, if you're doing a deal, especially with more than one party, do that which you can cover. He said, yeah, do a bit less, but don't be one now you owe this one money and that one money and this one money and you can't pay. Always be able to cover your position. Don't take more than you can cover or chew.
Yes, wallahi, that's invaluable. That's brilliant advice because, I've been in situations where you take money from someone in order to give someone else, and this guy doesn't come through. You shouldn't have spent that money, or you shouldn't have used it. You should have it with you in order to go and give back the money. Or say perhaps you're putting two people together and you try and make some money in between. This happens a lot of the time. So you cover that guy's position with your money. You should be able to do it such that you can cover the deal just in case it goes sour. So you've now taken on that risk. So if you don't have the money, you can become like in debt in no time, beyond your capacity. You've gone way out of your comfort zone. It becomes very, very difficult for you to now cover that transaction. So I fully understand what is meant by this. I've seen many people doing it the other way and then making mistakes and going wrong. Just recently, I was speaking to someone, and he's just what they call wheelers and dealers in Zimbabwe, right? He's just a wheeler and a dealer, and he just disappeared from the streets completely. Nobody knows where he is, what's happened. And then later on, I found out that he owes people money. So he's gone AWOL, literally. He had to disappear because of the money that he owed. He seemed to be a trustworthy person, but it's possible that, a deal went sour and he lost the money. He never really stole it, so to say, and he had no response, so he disappeared completely. So this rings true with me when you speak about this.
What's also possible, there's in business, whoever knows, there's good times and there's bad times. And a lot of times people forecast according to the good times. So again, taking this phone, let's say in the good times, we can sell it for $10 and I buy 100 pieces with borrowed money. I'm basing my forecast that I'm going to make so much profit on the fact that I'm selling this phone at $10. Later on, you may not know. that with 10 of your phones, there may be problems with it. There may be somebody else who comes and flood the markets and prices go down to $5 where you're no longer profitable and you're no longer able to sell and no longer able to cover your position. So a lot of the times we find that what happens is when people lose money, yes, sometimes they're completely dishonest, right? Other times they've only forecasted in the good. We're only going to sell this for this much, not knowing that the market changes or the whole business cycle changes a few months later or 1 year later. So that's also important to mention.
Yes, wallahi, someone's mentioning borrowing to start a business. They've mentioned from a bank. We don't want to. Let's take out that part of from a bank in order to make it to be on the safe side Islamically. Would it be advisable to borrow to start a business?
Look, you know your situation best. You know who you're borrowing from. At times, your parents, they may be well off and they may give you money. They'll say they're borrowing to you, but they're actually encouraging you to do something with it. And if you lost a bit, they won't mind. So that depends. But as we mentioned before, you're living in a time where you don't need money to start a business. You need to put time and effort in. I was listening to somebody out there. I don't really want to mention his name, but only because he doesn't have the cleanest of language. But he speaks about, when you start an Instagram and you want to grow, basically you want to sell products and that on Instagram. He talks about the $1.80 strategy. Basically, he says, you have a target market. Let's say you're selling phones. Go to the top hashtags, look at the top pictures, start putting your 2 cents in the comments, leave things. So people will eventually look at you, they'll find you, you get exposure. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes being rejected hundreds and thousands of times. But what my point is that you can do it without borrowing money. Try your best not to borrow money. Yes, we're not saying it's completely not allowed. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and his dirr, his armor, his armor was as collateral was left as collateral with a Jewish man because of some of the food he had taken from him. So I think it's important to mention, try your best, especially the world we're living in today, getting into debt and people, I was reading that what happens if everybody pays their credit card debt off? The system is designed such that if everybody pays their debt off, that spells total disaster. They need to make you carry on going into debt further and further and further and further. So the system carries on. So they'll tell you, okay, you know what, you owe us 100,000. People tell you, you owe us 100,000, you can't pay. Okay, you know what you do? We'll give you so long, but pay us more, or give us equity in your business, or give us this. And especially if you can't pay off, it becomes very hard.
Yes, the other thing is that if you're borrowing, it should be in an idea, to do with an idea that is extremely viable and you're 99% sure that this is going to work. Because if you don't and you lose and you have no way to pay that back, it becomes very, very difficult for you. You suffer anxiety, you can suffer stress, you can go through problems, difficulties, solely based on something that you never needed in your life. It was something over and beyond necessity. Because, starting a business is not necessity. You can have a job and start a business in conjunction with that job, where you have a normal income that is coming in, and at the same time you started some business idea that is working, it's slowly growing. Like you said, you need very little capital or no capital at all to start a business today. So I think if you want to borrow, then be sure of the idea that you're doing. It works. You've either tried it and tested it. It works. It's a system. Now all you require is the finance, the injection. And another way to do it would be to look for a person who has the capital but doesn't have the time or the know-how in business. And you can ask them that, look, I'm going to put my time in, you put the capital in, let's have a partnership. But again, partnership comes with its own issues and problems. So you've got to be careful as to how you structure your deals, how you go into business, what you do. SubhanAllah, it's something very, very interesting.
Yes, I think two things I can add to that. The first is there's an interesting book called The Lean Startup. Basically, the idea is that, yes, you've got the idea, test it out with an MVP or minimum viable product. So you find somebody who wants to open a shop, for example. They then spend so much money on the decoration and the chair and the desk and this on all extras. They haven't even tested the idea. They were already so much in debt, or they already have lost so much money. If you're able to test your idea, take it on the smallest scale possible, test it, the idea works, look further. That's what all these big companies do, regardless of halal and haram. But the idea is that we will make a minimum viable product that doesn't have all the extras or everything extra, something small, something that works, the bare bones of it. The idea is good. Then they go and ask for funding, so to say. There's companies who've made it without funding. Another important thing I could add or mention is that we spoke about learning from experience. Yes, you obviously should learn from experience and doing, but you must also benefit from those who have passed you in the same field, because that shaves a lot of time off your learning curve. So learning from this one having made this mistake, this mistake, this mistake, if you're going to get to the answer 5 years later or 10 years later or a similar answer, start learning from them or knowing things, hanging around with them, asking them questions. It might be online, the access we've got today, especially on a platform like Twitter, you would find that you've got access to some of the best minds. You message them, they reply to you. It's something amazing, something I find that, we should make use of this. Yes, I think there's people of different levels. So there's those who are, sad and in a difficult place, and we make dua and we ask Allah to help them. Then you get to a place where, okay, you're consuming nice content. So you come to social media to make you smile, and then, to have a better day, to see a few good photos, to catch up with people. And then there's another level of people who are builders, people who are using these platforms to come with, see a new idea into reality. And I found that being in a community of builders, you learn a lot.
Yes. Something interesting is I, as much as there is a scope, this vast scope online, I actually prefer to do things physically. Why? Because, you see there's a joy that comes out of building something from scratch and then seeing it now slowly the wheels begin to turn. And now you reach a point where you no longer have to fuel it, it's fueling itself and it grows, and it's actual physical, products that you're dealing with. It's either buying and selling or it's manufacturing. There's a beauty to then going out advertising and finding physical people walking into your door. There's something amazing. But at the same time, I understand the value of the online presence. So you've got to have an online presence and build that as much as possible. And I think there's a dangerous point in business where people have now built something of value. It's now paying you something. The wheels are turning, and you reach a point where you become complacent, where you think that now I'm good, I'm set. And that's very dangerous, because now you've stopped developing, you've stopped growing, so to speak. You think that you're comfortable. Any business that is viable and it continues in the long term is one that innovates and continues to change with the times. So you should know the product that you're selling, what's coming next in the market. You should be, so to speak, I learned this from your dad. You should be the leader in the market. You should know the future of the goods in your field, what's going to be sold in the future. You should be knowing all of this. And perhaps your market is not yet there, but you should be the leader. You should introduce it, start it, innovate, change. The minute you feel complacent or you feel comfortable where you are, that I'm okay now, I don't need to develop and grow from here, your business is actually at risk of completely imploding or losing total value altogether.
Speaking about the online and offline, I thought about it deeply and I realized if you're online, or if you want to grow big, you will need that offline. And if you're offline, you will also need to get online. So as you get bigger, they both complement one another. Another thing is, yes, it's hard work when it comes to your business. What you might see people's, fast cars, and especially those on YouTube, etc. And what you would find is that a lot of the times in the business, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So wouldn't say the down points, but some of the things you should be prepared for. If you have a job, for example, from 9 to 5 and finish to your home, your business now lives with you, literally, so to speak. It's 24/7. I think you can also relate to that. Anything goes wrong, usually, especially when you're starting off, you've got no system in place, you are the first line of defense, so to speak. You need to be on the phone, you need to be doing this person's things. There's a lot more stress involved, so to say.
Yes, wallahi, there's a lot more stress initially, but as time goes, you will find yourself able to employ others in certain positions, put them and offload that stress onto them, so to speak. Offload that portion of work onto them, and that way you're able to grow. I'm against this idea of remaining a person who is extremely vital to the functionality of your business in the long term. Yes, you must be there, you must be overseeing things, but the more you have, the more you earn from this business, the more your money should work for you rather than you working for your money. Because ultimately, if you keep working for your money, I know a man, and I've mentioned this before, I think, I know a man who's now been in a shop for 10 years. He started behind his shop counter, dealing with customers one-on-one, taking money and giving them receipts, and he's still behind the shop counter today. But it's 10 years later and he's earned millions of dollars out of this business. He's grown phenomenally. My point is, why are you doing that? Why are you still working for your money? You can easily employ people who will work for your money and put strict measures in place such that you minimize theft and pilferage, etc. You just minimize it and reach that point. As it is, they're going to be stealing whether you're there or not. In certain places they don't care whether you're there watching them or you're not. They're going to be stealing. So you've got to minimize that theft and try and employ people who can do that job. How hard is it to have a cashier there? Collecting your money and doing your accounts at the end of the day by yourself, and then at some point you employ someone to do the cashing up for you as well, and then you look after them. You make sure that you look after them so they don't steal from you. So in order to grow, I think you've got to delegate. That's the word to be used. As your business grows, delegate and then work on other ideas, growing your business, that particular business, or growing another business. So as an individual, you grow as a whole. Not only you don't keep investing your time in the same small menial jobs that you started by doing at a time when you were required to do those jobs.
You mentioned this, and I think, yes, if you want to grow, you need to decentralize power, so to speak. Yes, there's some people who just love the work, going to work, what we may see as difficult. That's what keeps them going every day. They just love being there. So that would be a bit different. But yes, if you want to grow, the small decisions, you've got to give it to somebody else to make. Somebody speaking about wealth being a test. Everything in your life is a test. Everything that you have a decision in is a test. That's why one of the pious predecessors, he says that when pondering over the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, who had everything, Allah praises him and says, Ni'mal abd. And when pondering over the story of Ayyub alayhi salam, who was tested with the most difficult of tests, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ni'mal abd, praising them both. And he says, and from there, I prefer to have afiyah and goodness than to go through difficulty. Yes, you will go through difficulty in life to a certain degree. Wealth is a test, but at the same time, poverty is also a test. You having money or you having a business is a test, and not having it is also part of the trial. So everything is, as we mentioned before, your niyyah is important, and using your wealth as a means to attain Jannah.
Yes, yes. Wallahi, you have people this ideology, or should I say stigma, that's attached to being wealthy or having money or pursuing money. And I don't think that in and of itself it's a bad thing. If, like you mentioned, the goal is the akhirah. And ultimately, even pursuing wealth in order to make yourself comfortable. You've got to live, you've got to survive. So you want to live in comfort. Some people want to live in luxury. That's okay so long as it's not distracting them from the primary purpose of life, which is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, building for the akhirah. If people understand this, then there's nothing wrong. Like you mentioned, some of the Sahaba who are the best of creation after the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, they had wealth. This Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you mentioned, he had wealth, he was wealthy, and he was, he was powerful, so to speak. But that didn't distract him from his primary purpose, which is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think on the same topic, it's important to mention that people or prices and a lifestyle differs from place to place, from country to country. What we may term as an expensive meal here, for example, would be counted as cheap in Zimbabwe because they're dealing with dollars, for example, if you had to work it out. So sometimes if you see somebody who may be driving a very good car, or they may have, let's say they're going for a restaurant, for example, and let's say there's somebody who is posting whatever online. Some people have different extremes, so to say. Some will tell you that, oh, how are you posting this when there's so many people who are dying, and how can you eat a meal worth $10? Well, how do you know? In that place, the cheapest meal may be $50. I once read that a certain place in Europe, the cheapest shirts are starting at $50, whereas here or elsewhere in the third world, you might find it at $3. So you've got to put that, don't judge somebody else because of something apparent you see, or the car they drive, or the way they dress. It's the judgment is with Allah. Leave Allah to judge, you don't judge. Your job as a Muslim is to have good thoughts of them and carry on. There's some people, that's why it's also mentioned by a lot of the ulama. Yes, there is arrogance when it comes to wealth, but there is also a fake form of zuhd and minimalism, where people try to show that, their clothes are tatty, and they don't have the best of things, and they don't dress in the best of way, and it's all a show. We're not saying everybody who does it, but it's on both sides of the spectrum. So don't beat one side only and think that, oh, only this. And the other point I wanted to mention is that you can't gauge everybody according to one situation or circumstance that you may be very passionate about, or that's going on in the world. You can't blame this one who might have a business and who may go on holiday and say that, how can you go on holiday when somebody else doesn't have food somewhere else in the world? Yes, we feel it. Yes, we try our best to help where we can. But a lot of the times what we don't realize, and that's one thing I didn't realize, is that a lot of business people you see, mashallah, we have good thoughts of them, and they help a lot of people. They help a lot of people. And you might look at somebody who may not be or seem religious at all in their dress, or even in some of their dealings, they may be doubtful things. I found a lot of them to help a lot of people.
Yes, wallahi, sometimes they're the driving force behind the goodness that we're engaged in, and we don't even realize it. Sometimes there's a mosque that you attend, or a madrasa that you go to, and the funding comes from a person who you've been criticizing all your life, and we don't even know that this is the man that's been really the driving force behind the goodness that is there. So, subhanAllah, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with having wealth or pursuing wealth, so long as we tie it to that condition of never forgetting the akhirah. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this.
There's somebody saying about employers and employees. Definitely, we agree with you there, that how can somebody the employer goes on holiday and they haven't even paid the employees? Yes, that's a problem. But that problem tells me I've got 25 seconds left. I think we've gone for an hour today. Yes, that is a problem, but it doesn't make all of them wrong, so to say. Shaykhana, inshallah, I think we carry on maybe this conversation another day. It will cut off in 10 seconds. Barakallahu feekum.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykhana, and it was lovely chatting to you. We speak to you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Maybe we carry on the same topic. Yallah.